Hi friends, it's Old Testament Tuesday. I haven't done one of these for a while because I was frankly spending more time in the New Testament and as well as occupied with a variety of projects. But I started reading Genesis last week and I came across something that just felt very timely to me. I, like many of you, have been pretty absorbed with just the high drama of this election. And I live in Texas. I live in kind of a bubble where, most people that I'm close with are pretty like-minded about things. But I understand that all around me are people who think the opposite way. And friends, family members, acquaintances. And I'm determined to not let political disagreements destroy relationships that are important to me. And I believe that many of you who are watching this feel that way also, but it can be very hard. And so when I came across the story of Abram, his first call, he was in Mesopotamia, and the Lord calls him and tells him to leave his place he's living, leave all of his relatives, and go to the place that God is going to show him. So he's obedient and he goes, but he takes along one of his relatives, his nephew Lot. Well, we learn a lot more about Lot in the book of Genesis as it proceeds along, that show him to be a pretty flawed and immoral and foolish in his decisions sometimes. But he must have been close to his uncle Abram, and he was invited to go along on this adventure. So they go to the land of Canaan, and God speaks to him and begins to unfold the covenant that he's going to make with Abraham and the generations that succeed him. And it says in chapter 13 that they're still traveling. They're traveling toward the Negev, and Abram was very, very wealthy. He had amassed a lot of livestock, silver and gold, and Lot also was very, very wealthy with sheep, cattle, and many tents, it says. And so they had all this livestock that were competing for limited resources, so they decide wisely to separate and select a portion of land where their flocks will be able to graze and their herdsmen aren't arguing all the time. He says, Abram talks it over with Lot. This arguing between our herdsmen has got to stop, he said. After all, we are close relatives. I'll tell you what we'll do. Take your choice of any section of the land you want, and we will separate. If you want that area over there, then I'll stay here. If you want to stay in this area, then I'll move on to another place. That was very diplomatic of Abram to make that offer. And he knew it was worth doing because he didn't want a conflict. He didn't want a bunch of conflict. So they separated, but they weren't so far apart that they would never see each other again. They just agreed to make space. Just make some space for each other. So that seemed to work well for them. Until there was a war between these four kings went to war against five kings, and one of the kings raided where Lot was living near Sodom, and he plundered the whole place and took away all of their goods, and they abducted Lot, took him captive. So Abraham hears about this, and he goes out himself with over 300 of the men that were born in his household. So he not only had a lot of livestock and wealth, he had a lot of people that traveled with him. He had quite an entourage, and he took this whole little militia out, and he went and did business and rescued Lot and got all the stuff back. And so it just shows me that even though Abram and Lot had a very contentious relationship at time, and their families had a contentious relationship, they decide, first of all, the wise thing that they did, let's separate so that we're not fighting with each other. And then when there was a need, when Lot had a need to be rescued, Abram was going to rescue him because he was a loved one. He was part of his family. And it just spoke to me about the wisdom of sometimes giving space for people that you love and care about who have a very different view about something, letting them have that view, letting them have their space. And when the time is appropriate for you to come together and talk about other things and share life together, I think it's a good thing to be able to do that. So that's where I am. I'm not spending a lot of time around people that feel really passionate on the other side of things, because I just don't want, I want to give each of us space to have our own view. I wish it was like that in a larger sense in our country right now, but it's gotten very, very ugly, and it's heartbreaking for so many of us. So I'm not going to be silenced anymore. On the other hand, I'm not going to impose my views on people. I'm going to give space, and I'm going to remain open for people to come back into my life in some way when all the mess is, I don't know, when it's resolved to some degree. People are too important. People are more important than politics. So, love you all. Thank you.